She humiliated him in front of everyone, called him invisible without ever saying the word, and walked away like his dignity meant nothing. Hours later, her daughter lay dying in a hospital hallway, and the only blood that could save her was his. The janitor she mocked held her child's life in his veins, and he had a choice that would expose everything she believed about power, pride, and worth. This is not just a story about forgiveness. It's about the moment a single decision shatters arrogance, rewrites fate, and forces one woman to face a truth she can never outrun. At 4:30 every morning, Daniel Brooks woke up before the city remembered how to breathe. The alarm on his cracked phone vibrated softly against the nightstand, not loud enough to wake his daughter. He reached out, silenced it, and lay still for a moment, listening. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the old refrigerator and the slow, even breathing coming from the couch beside him. Emily was curled into herself, her small body wrapped in a faded blanket, one arm draped protectively over a stuffed rabbit missing one eye. Her chest rose and fell with care, like it had learned caution too early in life. Daniel watched her longer than necessary, the way he always did, as if memorizing the sight in case one day the world took it away from him. 6 years old, brave, too brave. He slipped out of bed, moved through the apartment on bare feet, and started the coffee maker. The bitter smell filled the narrow kitchen, mixing with the faint scent of disinfectant he carried home every day from work. He pulled on his uniform. Navy pants, a matching shirt with his name stitched above the pocket. Daniel Brooks, Janitorial Services. Once his name had been printed on engineering blueprints. Once people had called him Sir. That life had ended 3 years ago in a hospital room that smelled exactly like this one always did. Antiseptic, plastic, fear. His wife had squeezed his hand as the machines beeped around her, her voice thin but steady when she told him not to be angry at the world. "Take care of Emily," she had whispered. "Promise me." He had promised. Promises were the only thing holding him up right now. By 5:30, Daniel pushed his cleaning cart through the glass doors of Hawthorne Group headquarters in downtown Raleigh. The lobby gleamed with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the early sunlight and turned it into something expensive-looking. Everything here spoke the language of power, polished, controlled, untouchable. Daniel worked quietly. He always did. Windows first, then the floors. Thursday mornings mattered more than others. Executive meeting day. Perfection was expected, not requested, demanded. By 7:15, he was almost finished. The cart sat near the elevator bank while he buffed the last stretch of marble, careful, precise, the way he had once been with machines that could fail if handled carelessly. He did not hear the heels. He only heard the voice, sharp, cold, cutting through the lobby like broken glass. "What is this supposed to be?" Daniel looked up. Lauren Whitmore stood a few feet away, the CEO of Hawthorne Group, blonde hair pulled into a severe knot, tailored suit, expression carved from impatience. She gestured at his cart, which blocked part of the executive elevator path. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Daniel said calmly. "I'll move it right away." But she wasn't listening. "If this is the standard we've fallen to," she said loudly, "it explains why everything keeps slipping. Equipment everywhere, blocking access, creating hazards." Heads turned. Conversations stopped. The lobby held its breath. Daniel moved the cart, his hands steady even as heat crawled up his neck. He had learned long ago that reacting only made humiliation last longer. "I apologize for the inconvenience," he said quietly. Lauren looked at him then. Really looked. Her eyes traveled over the uniform, the worn shoes, the calloused hands. Whatever conclusion she reached hardened her expression. "Make sure it doesn't happen again," she said, and walked past him without another word. Her heels clicked against the marble he had polished for over an hour. The sound stayed with him. The lobby remained silent for a moment after she left. Someone whispered, "Poor guy." Someone else said, "She didn't have to do that." Daniel finished his work and pushed the cart toward the service quarter. In 3 hours, he would clock out. He would pick up Emily. He would take her to her doctor appointment. He would make her laugh on the bus ride home. This would fade. It always did. St. Anne Medical Center was crowded that afternoon. Daniel signed Emily in and found seats in the pediatric waiting room. She swung her legs gently, flipping through a picture book, her expression serious in the way only children with too much experience in hospitals ever looked. Routine checkup, monitoring her heart murmur. So far stable. When the nurse called their name, Daniel lifted Emily into his arms and followed her down the hallway. They were passing the emergency entrance when chaos broke loose. A gurney burst through double doors, paramedics shouting instructions, monitors screaming warnings. Daniel pressed Emily against the wall instinctively, catching glimpses of pale skin, an oxygen mask, small hands curled tight. 7-year-old female, someone called out. Internal bleeding. Vitals dropping. The gurney disappeared around the corner. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew that fear, that helpless, hollow terror that settled deep and refused to leave. Daddy, Emily whispered. Is she okay? They're helping her, he said, though his voice wasn't as steady as he wanted. That's what doctors do. They reached the exam room. The appointment passed quickly. Good news. No changes. Stable. Relief settled in his chest like a fragile thing he didn't want to touch too hard. 20 minutes later, as they walked back through the corridor, a scream cut through the air. Daniel turned the corner and froze. A wheelchair lay overturned. A nurse was on her knees, calling for help. And on the floor, inches from Daniel's feet, was the same little girl from the gurney. Her hospital gown twisted, her face gray, her body convulsing. She pulled out her IV, the nurse cried. I couldn't catch her. Daniel set Emily gently against the wall. Stay right here. Don't move. Then he dropped to his knees. Training surfaced from somewhere deep. He turned the girl onto her side, protected her airway, cushioned her head with his jacket, counted the seconds as her body shook. It's okay, he said softly, voice low and steady. You're safe. I've got you. Her eyes fluttered open when the seizure stopped. Blue, wide, terrified. She grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Please, she whispered, don't let me die. My mommy isn't here. Something broke open in Daniel's chest. I'm right here, he said. I'm not going anywhere. The medical team rushed in moments later, lifting the girl onto a new gurney. Daniel stepped back, hands shaking now that the danger had passed. Emily ran to him and wrapped her arms around his legs. You helped her, she said. You saved her. Somewhere down the hallway, a woman's voice cried out in panic. Daniel did not see Lauren Whitmore run past. He did not see her face collapse when she reached the trauma room. He only knew a little girl was fighting for her life. They were waiting in the main lobby when the intercom crackled. Code red. O negative blood needed immediately. Pediatric emergency. Daniel felt his breath catch. Emily looked up at him. That's your blood, she said softly. The special kind. He nodded. Somewhere in that hospital, a mother was reliving the worst moment of her life. Daniel stood up and took his daughter's hand. We need to help someone, he said. The donation center was crowded. Tests, rejections, time slipping away. When Daniel gave his blood type, the coordinator's eyes widened. You're a perfect match, she said. Actually better than perfect. She hesitated. This would be a large donation. There are risks. I understand, Daniel said. I'm sure. The doors burst open then. Lauren Whitmore stumbled inside, hair disheveled, face streaked with tears, power stripped away by fear. She saw him. Recognition hit her like a blow. The janitor, the man from the lobby, the man holding her daughter's life in his veins. Daniel lay back as the needle slid in, his blood flowing steadily into the bag. Emily sat nearby, watching him with quiet courage far beyond her years. Outside the room, Lauren stood frozen, staring through the glass as the man she had humiliated chose to save her child without hesitation. And for the first time in her life, she had no words. Would you still help someone who hurt you deeply if their child's life depended on it? Yes or no? The donation room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the slow, rhythmic beeping of a monitor. Daniel lay still, his arm extended, the tube carrying his blood away from him in a steady crimson line. He focused on breathing evenly, on the familiar weight of Emily's gaze as she sat in the chair beside him, her feet not quite touching the floor. Daddy, she whispered, careful not to disturb anyone. Does it hurt? Not really, he said, forcing a small smile. Just makes me a little tired. Emily nodded, clutching her stuffed rabbit tighter. She had learned early that tired didn't mean weak. It meant you were doing something important. Across the glass, Lauren Whitmore hadn't moved. She stood in the hallway as if rooted to the floor, her hands clenched at her sides, eyes locked on the man in the donation chair. This was not the version of him she had seen that morning. Not the uniform, not the cart, not the obstacle in her way. This man was pale now, jaw set with effort, giving something of himself piece by piece so her daughter could breathe. The nurse adjusted the flow and glanced at Daniel's chart. You're doing great, she said. About halfway there. A wave of dizziness rolled through him. He swallowed and nodded, focusing on Emily's face, on her eyes, on the promise he had made. Lauren pressed her palm against the glass. She had built her life on control, Numbers, schedules, leverage. She knew how to dominate a room, how to dismantle a competitor with a sentence. But standing there watching the blood drain from a man she had dismissed hours earlier, she felt something unfamiliar claw at her chest. Shame. Not the kind that faded with an apology. The kind that burned. The nurse stepped out and spoke to Lauren in a low voice. "The transfusion will start immediately once we have enough. Your daughter's hanging on." Lauren nodded, unable to speak. Her throat felt too tight. She watched Daniel's head tilt back slightly, watched him blink more slowly, watched his daughter reach up and rest her hand on his wrist as if lending him strength. Lauren turned away then, pressing her back to the wall. For the first time in years, she saw herself clearly. Not as a leader, not as a visionary, but as a woman who had looked at another human being and decided he was invisible. 45 minutes later, the bag was full. The nurse disconnected the line and helped Daniel sit up slowly. The room tilted. He breathed through it, accepting the juice she handed him with a nod. "We're done," she said. "You did it." Outside, the hallway erupted into controlled movement. Doctors hurried. Orders were called. Daniel's blood was wheeled away toward the operating room. Emily slid off her chair and wrapped her arms around his waist, careful of the needle mark on his arm. "You were brave," she said. Daniel kissed the top of her head. "So were you." Lauren stood a few steps away, watching them, watching the way he held his daughter like she was the only thing anchoring him to the ground. The surgeon emerged less than an hour later. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, "the transfusion worked. Sophie is stable. Surgery will follow, but the danger has passed." Lauren's knees nearly gave out. She grabbed the wall, breath hitching as relief crashed over her. "Can I see her?" "In a little while," he said. "She's resting." Lauren nodded, tears spilling freely now. She turned, searching without knowing why. Daniel was gone. The nurse told her he had been discharged, that he was waiting in the lobby with his daughter for a ride home. Lauren didn't think. She didn't plan. She walked. The hospital lobby was nearly empty, bathed in the yellow light of evening. Daniel sat on a bench near the entrance. Emily asleep against his chest, her head tucked beneath his chin. He looked exhausted, pale, smaller somehow. Lauren stopped a few feet away, suddenly unsure of herself. "Mr. Brooks," she said softly. He looked up, eyes wary but calm. "I wanted to thank you," she began, then stopped. The words felt insufficient. "What you did today, there are no words." Daniel studied her for a long moment. He thought of the lobby, of the way her voice had carried, of how small he had felt. "I didn't do it for you," he said quietly. "I did it for your daughter." "I know," Lauren said, her voice cracking, "and that's what makes it worse." She took a step closer. "I hurt you today. I judged you. I spoke to you like you didn't matter. And then you saved my child's life." Daniel shifted Emily gently, careful not to wake her. "She needed help," he said. "I could help." Lauren shook her head. "I don't know if I would have done the same." Daniel met her eyes then. "I hope you never have to find out." Silence stretched between them. "Please," Lauren said finally, "let me at least make sure you get home safely." Daniel hesitated, then nodded. "That would be appreciated." The car arrived quickly. Lauren watched as he buckled Emily into the seat, his movements slow but careful. "I'm sorry," she said again. "Truly." Daniel didn't answer that. He closed the door and the car pulled away, leaving Lauren alone on the hospital steps, staring into the night. The board meeting the next morning was brutal. 8 faces around the table. Tight expressions, measured disappointment. "You abandoned a critical investor presentation," the chairman said. "Questions were raised about your priorities." Lauren listened, hands folded, heart steady in a way it hadn't been the day before. "My daughter almost died," she said quietly, "and a man I humiliated saved her." The room stilled. She stood. "I've spent years thinking power meant control. Yesterday showed me how wrong I was. This company will change, or you can replace me." She walked out before anyone could stop her. 6 weeks later, the lobby of Hawthorne Group looked different, not because the marble had changed, but because the people had. Employees filled the space, executives, custodial staff, parents holding children. Daniel stood near the front, uncomfortable in a borrowed suit. Emily beside him in a dress she insisted was special. Lauren stepped to the microphone. "This program exists," she said, "because one man reminded me that dignity isn't earned. It's inherent." She looked at Daniel. "He gave his blood when he owed me nothing. He showed grace where I deserved none." Applause filled the room. Daniel spoke briefly, about being a single parent, about choosing between work and a doctor, about how small changes could mean everything. Later that afternoon, Daniel returned to the hospital with Emily. Sophie was awake now, color back in her cheeks. Emily handed her a handmade card, shy but smiling. "Thank you for saving me," Sophie whispered. Daniel knelt. "You did the hard part." The girls smiled at each other, something simple and pure forming between them. Lauren watched from the doorway, feeling something ease inside her chest. Snow began to fall outside the window, soft and quiet. Two families sat together in the hospital cafe, watching their daughters laugh, the weight of what had almost been hanging in the air. Lauren broke the silence. "Do you believe people can truly change?" Daniel looked at the girls, then at her. "I think they can," he said, "if they're willing to face who they were." "Do you believe one act of kindness can truly change a person's life? Yes or no?" The first real snow of the year fell quietly over Raleigh, softening the city the way time softens pain. Daniel Brooks noticed it through the cafe window at St. Anne Medical Center, the flakes drifting down like they had nowhere else to be. Emily pressed her nose to the glass, eyes wide, leaving a small foggy circle behind. "It's sticking," she whispered, like it was a secret meant only for them. Across the table, Sophie laughed, her color books forgotten as she watched Emily trace shapes on the window. 2 weeks ago, Sophie had been fighting for her life. Now her cheeks were pink, her hair neatly braided, her voice full of energy that filled the space between them. Lauren Whitmore sat back in her chair, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't touched. She watched the girls with a quiet expression, one Daniel had never seen on her face before. Not in the lobby, not in boardrooms, not on magazine covers. Peace looked unfamiliar on her, but it fit. "They've been asking for each other every day," Lauren said softly. "Sophie keeps saying she wants to see her friend with the brave dad." Daniel smiled, tired but genuine. "Emily says Sophie is the first friend who doesn't look at her like she's fragile." Lauren's throat tightened. She nodded, looking away for a moment. When they left the hospital that afternoon, something felt different. Not dramatic, not loud, just changed, the way a room feels after fresh air finally comes in. Life didn't magically become easier for Daniel overnight. He still woke at 4:30, still packed lunches, still worked long hours, but things shifted in small, meaningful ways. The single-parent support program at Hawthorne Group wasn't just a press release. Health insurance arrived in an envelope Daniel opened 3 times to be sure it was real. Flexible hours followed, emergency childcare coverage, paid days off for medical appointments. For the first time since his wife died, Daniel slept through the night without calculating how many hours he could afford to rest. Lauren changed too. The board resisted at first. There were meetings, arguments, threats of replacement. But Lauren didn't bend. She had already faced the worst fear of her life. Losing her position no longer frightened her the way losing her daughter had. She started walking the building, talking to people, learning names, listening. When she passed Daniel in the lobby now, she stopped, asked about Emily, asked how he was feeling after the donation. Really asked. And slowly word spread. Not about the CEO, about the culture. One afternoon, months later, Daniel stood outside a small elementary school, stamping his feet against the cold while waiting for Emily. Snow crunched beneath boots. Parents chatted. Kids burst through doors laughing. Emily ran straight into his arms, breathless and smiling. "Daddy," she said, eyes shining. "Guess what?" He laughed. "What?" "My heart checkup got moved up," she said. "The doctor says I'm doing really good." Daniel held her tighter than necessary, blinking fast. They walked home together, hands tucked into coat pockets, the world glowing with streetlights and falling snow. That weekend, Lauren invited them over. Daniel hesitated before accepting. Old instincts told him to keep distance, to protect what was fragile. But Emily begged, and something inside him knew this wasn't about power anymore. Lauren's house was warm and lived in, not staged. Toys scattered, a faint smell of cookies in the air. Sophie ran to Emily the moment they arrived, dragging her toward the backyard where fresh snow waited untouched. Daniel stood near the window, watching them tumble and laugh, their voices rising into the winter air. Lauren joined him, quiet. "I used to think success was about never needing anyone," she said. "About staying untouchable." Daniel nodded. "That's a lonely way to live." "I know that now," she said. "I missed so much of Sophie's life chasing something I thought mattered." They stood in silence, the kind that didn't need filling. "I can't undo what I said to you," Lauren continued. "I know that, but I want you to know this wasn't temporary for me. The changes, the choices, they're real." Daniel looked at her then, not as a CEO, Not as a woman defined by her worst moment, just as a mother who had learned the hard way. "I believe you," he said simply. Spring came early that year. Emily's checkups grew less frequent. Sophie's scar faded. The girls started sleepovers, birthday parties, inside jokes that made no sense to adults. Daniel returned to engineering work part-time, consulting on systems improvements for Hawthorne Group, his skills valued again without the weight of judgment. Lauren stepped back from endless hours, learning how to leave meetings early and show up for soccer games. On one quiet afternoon, months after the hospital, the four of them sat on a park bench watching the girls chase pigeons across the grass. Daniel thought of his wife, of the promise he had made, of how close he had come to breaking. He hadn't saved his own family, not from illness, not from loss, but he had kept his promise. Lauren watched him watching the girls. "Thank you," she said, not for the first time. Daniel shook his head. "We helped each other." The sun dipped low, casting long shadows. The girls ran back, breathless, faces flushed with happiness. In that moment, Daniel understood something he hadn't before. Healing didn't erase pain, it grew around it, made space for joy without denying the scars. Life didn't give you fairness. Sometimes it gave you second chances. As the camera pulls away from this story, from two families brought together by a single act of humanity, one question lingers quietly in the air. How did this story make you feel? And what do you think about the choices these characters made? If this story touched you, please leave a comment below. Let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell next to the subscribe button so you never miss a new story. Tell us which country you're watching from, and if this story moved you, share it with someone who might need to hear it today.